Aye, kuwe kuwa maduwe.
Aye, kuwe maduwe.
Aye, kuwe kuwa maduwe.
Aye, kuwe maduwe.
Could you state your name, please?
Fred Blackwell.
Fred Blackwell. Thank you. Well, thank you for coming today.
Well, give thanks. It's good to be here.
Absolutely. Could you state your name, please?
Jason Seals.
Jason Seals. And Ron, where did you grow up?
Born and raised in Gary, Indiana, man.
Gary, Indiana.
Yeah. Very, very nice neighborhood. Self-contained. It's when you knew where the black people lived. When the time I was growing up, black people lived in Midtown.
Midtown, okay.
And my particular experience was very, very positive, man, because literally our neighborhood was self-contained. The local doctor was down the street, pharmacy, the cleaners, pool room, library, wash house, restaurant, corner store, and our high school. So we can go, well, I could go from 8 blocks east from Broadway to Harrison on 25th Avenue, and every entity that I just mentioned was self-contained right there on 25th Avenue, man.
All right.
So, man, I was just totally blessed, man, to grow up in that particular neighborhood and during that particular time, too. Yeah.
We really appreciate having you here, and this is part of the Oral History Project for the Brotherhood of Elders Network. So we're just very excited to get to speak with you and really get to hear you tell your story. So we appreciate you.
Yes.
Well, let's start off with the first question. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in New York City. I was born June 19, 1938 at Harlem Hospital. I spent the first 22 years of my life in Harlem. And yeah.
Okay. What was it like growing up in Harlem?
At that time, it was just at the tail end of the Renaissance, Harlem Renaissance. And Harlem was a very exciting place to be. Black people would walk up and down the street with dressed very well. The Easter holiday was very exciting. Everybody dressed to the nines, you know. And as a kid, the stores were owned by a lot of black people. You had the occasional white store owners, but it was primarily black. I felt safe, and it was a wonderful place to grow up, frankly. I could take the bus anywhere I wanted to and play anywhere I wanted to and feel comfortable doing so.
That's good. So you got a chance to explore even outside of Harlem as you're growing up a lot?
Yes, but no, it was primarily entirely in Harlem. I would, as a kid, I was a loner primarily, you know. And I would take the bus to the Natural Museum of History and go to the planetarium, but I'd do those things on my own. I'd go to various hotels to swim, because I love to do that, particularly during the winter. But my growing up and my circumstance was primarily segregated in Harlem, with some occasional experience with white people. But for the most part, it was black.
Who or what influenced you as a child the most?
I'd say my mother and father influenced me most. They had certain expectations of me, and I honored those expectations. I was a latchkey kid at 9 years old, and so they expected me to do certain things and not bring other people into the house, and I would do that. They worked extremely hard. They were not educated people, but they appreciated the importance of education. And demanded that I put the time in. And so my father owned a restaurant in Harlem on 126th Street and 8th Avenue, which is right around the corner from the Apollo Theater. And so I would see a lot of the entertainers come in and out. And my father would work extremely long hours, sometimes 36 hours in a row.
Wow.
And my mother would relieve him, but I never had much contact with them, frankly, growing up, but I saw them in their work ethic, and that had a significant impact on me.
Wow. Did you ever work at the restaurant?
I never did. They had the restaurant there from the time I was 9 till 12, and then at 12 he bought a bar in New York on 125th Street, and so I never worked in the bar, of course.
Okay.
But the same kind of work ethic and demands were always that I saw them place on themselves, led me to do the same thing for myself.
I'm going to switch gears a little, but still on the same topic. What does being Black in America mean to you?
You know, this is an interesting question. What does it mean to be Black in America? I think being Black for me is a gift. I think sometimes the way we speak about our existence and our experience in America, it feels like a burden. I never want people to see our experience as a burden. It's not a burden to be a person of African ancestry. Is it difficult at times because of the racial climate? Absolutely. I have to teach my son at 7 years old how to survive, right? Like, that's a hard reality, and I have to do it in a way where I don't traumatize him and I don't create fear. I don't want to take away his joy or his curiosity, right? But I do have to prepare him, right? So at 43, I've been able to make it where I'm still here, I'm functioning at a high level. You know, those things are important. At the same time, I'm aware of what it is here. You know, there's a psychological, social, political attack on Black people in America. And if you read the works of many of our ancestors and elders, it's also a global issue. Yeah. And I think we have to understand that balance, that it's like there's so many joys, you know, that I experience as being a person of African ancestry. I mean, the community that I have, the rich culture, the rich history. When I travel places, I've been to the continent so many times, the energy, the tradition, it's so beautiful, right? So I carry that with me, knowing that when I navigate in America, it has to be intentional. I recognize that every time I speak, I'm not just speaking for myself, unfortunately. I'm speaking for my son, I'm speaking for my brothers, I'm speaking for my mother, I'm speaking for my community. Some spaces, I'm speaking for a Black man that I don't even know, because how they see me is going to be how they understand Black men or Black America. And that's a huge responsibility. Yeah. I don't know if I really want that, but I don't feel like I had an opportunity to choose. I feel like you have to be ready. And I've been fortunate to have men in my life, even though I didn't have my father, to help nurture that. Dr. Walter Davis, Dr. Abaye, right? These were like my mentors in college that spent time with me, just loving on me, just investing in me enough, right? And they became my models. And then with the Brotherhood of Elders, it's a whole new set of fathers, a whole new set of men, a whole new set of elders for me to model myself, to learn from, right? Even I think about when I learned that I was going to become a dad. I remember Bobby Perkins telling me, "You're going to fuck up. Just be there." And just that message of consistency and his directness was important, right? And so for me, I just think it's an interesting balance to be Black in America. I don't think I would change my experience because I think my experience is purposeful. But I do want to change my son's experience and children of his generation, where they don't have to deal with some of the same things that we deal with, right? I mean, I think that's part of what I want to do in my work. I think that's why, as an educator, I am so committed to people having awakenings, thinking about who they are, doing self-work that's transformational, so their transformation is impactful to their community, to their surroundings. I think there's a ripple effect. But yeah, I really do hope that there is something different, because when I think about the mass murders of Black men and Black women, those that are cis, queer, trans, I think my struggle is that it's just like a new form of lynching.
Yeah.
And it's a struggle to like deal with that, right? That's the thing that gets hard. It's like the emotional piece.
Yeah.
It's like it's hard to deal with that, right? Because I was reading Little Women. It's a book about Black women. And so it's like autobiography, but it's for kids, right? So I'm reading it to my son. We're reading it together. Reading the story of Sojourner Truth and Ida B. Wells, talking about segregation. They're talking about emancipation. My son's like, what's slavery? So I have to explain to him what slavery is.
Yeah.
He's like, well, why white people don't like us? Now, I teach racism in America. I can articulate this to adults, right? But for a 7-year-old to ask you why white people don't like us, it's a hard conversation to have because it's not a rational explanation.
Right.
And there's nothing I can say that's going to make him understand it. So he walks away like, okay, white people don't like us. And I'm walking away like, I don't know if that conversation went that well. I think we have to revisit that, right? But not wanting him to think negatively about every white person he sees, right? I'm not trying to jade him. I'm trying to expand his understanding, right? So for me, I think that's why that question is so difficult. It's like, you know, as a parent, I have to think about my experience, connect this to someone else's experience. Like, I don't get to just be negligent and carefree and not thoughtful, because I couldn't even imagine my son not growing up with me, right? Like my father wasn't present. And interestingly enough, now he calls me randomly and we talk, which is interesting because it's not like we have this like deep connection, but we've had some important conversations. Yeah. But I think the greatest gift I can give my son is being present. So, you know, it's an interesting walk to be Black in America, but I would say that balance is important.
Yeah, and one of the things I heard was I was going to say it's like a balancing act, or just like walking on a tightrope, having that conversation about racism and trying to answer the why behind it, because as you said, it's not a rational or just complete logical answer to give that, oh, it's because of X, Y, and Z, and trying to even explain the concept of white supremacy and just it impacts everyone in this way, but some people it's you know, they're more outwardly racist, other people that's a lot to, as a 7 or 8-year-old, to try to wrap your head around that. It's like so that's definitely a conversation that I'm sure you'll be revisiting again, and you know, unfortunately, I'm sure he'll have his own experience with that at some point, like we all do. Yeah. You know, to see that. So,
absolutely.
But having someone at least to be able to explain it in a way, kind of, in some ways, it cushions the fall. Not completely, but you at least having an understanding is, I'd think, a little bit better than just getting kind of, you know, tossed into a lot of these scenarios.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that's why I spend so much time with him, understanding how beautiful he is, how loved he is, how special he is, because racism attacks your humanity and will make you question your own value. And so for me, I want him to be proud of who he is. Because even reading a book like that, which is like, it's a kid's book, right? But he's also reading a kid's version of Malcolm X. So he's learning about these great historical figures and their narratives, right?
Yeah.
But he's also learning about the history that's so ugly in this country,
Yeah.
right? And I don't want him to think like, well, dang, like, is something wrong with me? Right? I don't want him to have that experience. I want him to understand how valuable he is, right?
Yeah.
Because I can remember growing up, and when I was growing up, if you called somebody African, that was an insult. I carried that, right? Now I talk to my son, I'm like, what's the difference between black and African? Nothing. Oh, okay. So he understands that, and he also understands he's both, right? And he loves himself. That's so important. Like those small gifts that I can give him, he doesn't know how far to go, and he doesn't have to like wait till he gets to college to be in African American Studies course, and then one day be like, oh shit, my history is rich.
Yeah.
Right? It didn't start with Africans being enslaved.
Right.
Like he gets to learn those things that I didn't. And so like, to be black in America, man, that's a journey. That's what it is, it's a journey.
Yeah. 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 As Nibba say, the marathon continues.
Right.
Yeah, definitely going from there. What does being black in America mean to you?
Pride, challenging, and resourceful in those areas. I cannot imagine what our people went through in the Middle Passage, man. And we're the descendants of the people that survived that boat ride, man. You know, so I always let young people know in that part too, man. You know, we survived that boat ride, man. And then got here and faced with just a system that was designed to keep us down and keep us to feel that we're less than human. And we still here, man. You know, and in spite of all the attempts to not keep us human, we still here and still fighting. So, yeah, that's that's three of the things I'm proud of, man. But the resilience is a big thing, man. You know, in spite of this madness.
No, I definitely hear that. There's been so many issues and consistently coming at us, and that hasn't slowed down, I think, or really stopped in any way, shape, or form. It's a lot of adapting.
Yeah.
Very similar to sports, as you mentioned when you were talking about learning how to play with your left hand and getting that stronger and just being able to switch at will.
Yep.
So it seems like for a society, for a black community, we kind of have to have that same mentality in a lot of ways.
We got to, man. We got it in order to better ourselves.
Yeah.
And staying fundamentally sound.
Fundamentally sound. I hear that. Fundamentally sound. That's right. Your coach should be proud.
Man, that applies to life, man.
Yeah.
But and aside to that real quick before we go to the next one, Brother Chris, I was telling, I was going home on a yearly basis to visit family. So the particular year that I was home and saw Coach Henderson, I saw some of my former teammates, you know, hanging out. We hadn't seen each other in a while. I said, man, I'm going to lunch with Coach Henderson tomorrow. So one of my partner goes, if you're fundamentally sound, and then my other partner finished the sentence. I'm like, oh man, he got all of us, man.
Yeah.
And, you know, we're in our 50s, man. You know, but he got all of us, and I shared that with him, and he just started busting up, man. But it was surreal, man. You know, I started off, everybody finished it, but that's the impact that he had on us, man. You know, and not only adapting to basketball, but to life as well. You know, so that's another one of the reasons that Coach Henderson is a big dude on my list, you know. Love that brother, man. Because at that particular time, too, as an aside, I was a little big-haired brother with the glasses. So I was about 4'11", you know, skinny dude with the glasses on and not that big, you know. But that was another reason that I really felt an affinity for Coach Henderson, man, because he didn't care what size I was. He just wanted to make sure I got that left hand, you know, which I did, you know. So, yeah, it's a cool brother, man. Real cool,
Yeah,
brother.
definitely sounds like it. What does being black in America mean to you?
Boy, it means so many things. It means having a shorter life expectancy. It means having less opportunity for decent housing. It means encounters with police and all of the complications that leads to. It means black cuisine. It means gorgeous black women. It means black art, black paintings, black music. It means overcoming the odds.
Yeah.
That's what it means to me.
I hear that.
It also means, I think, a certain amount of I hate to use this word, but hatred for America, for all that it's done to our people. Yeah.
Yeah.
And continues to do.
Yeah. There's certainly a lot of that.
Yeah.
You know, some things change, other things stay the same, unfortunately.
Exactly.
It appears like that. What are some lessons that you've learned about black society?
Oh boy, I've learned a lot about black society and society in general. I've learned that from the time that I was growing up in Harlem, it used to be that my mom and father could be away, but I'd be on the street. But there were women who lived in the building on the street that not only took care of their kids, but also looked out for me. And they had certain expectations of me. And if I did something that was terribly wrong, they let my folks know about it. In Harlem, there was, because of the segregation, we had a doctor living around the corner, had a funeral director living across the street. We had multiple businesses owned by black people. And interestingly, if there was conflict, it might escalate to a fist fight. And the fist fight, depending on how aggressive somebody got, might lead to a stick being used. But the stick, if it really got serious, I mean, and I saw this rarely, would evolve into a knife being pulled. Wow. Now, virtually any transgression will lead to a gun being used. You know, yeah. So it's been very, very depressing, in fact, to see that sort of violence take place. But it is simply an expression of what America is. America is about war. The games that I see being advertised on TV are so wrapped up in violence and conflict that I think that translates into the communities. And then the financial isolation and despair in our communities leads to intra-racial conflicts that would not ordinarily take place. You know, the lack of education and opportunity has led to that sort of thing. But America is about the business of war. And so I see that being translated into black society. Yeah, unfortunately.